panel's discussion, COVID-19 in Latin America, Opportunities in Demand Disruption. I am Vanessa Maibara. I'm the Marketing Manager for Latin America at ISI Emerging Markets Group. For over 25 years, ISI provides strategic information through their two platforms, CAC Data, which delivers macroeconomic and industry data on more than 200 economies, and IMIS that provides intelligence on company, industry, and country in emerging markets. Today, our panel discussion will be moderated by our global industry researcher, Svetoslav Miledanov. Svetoslav is an economist and has been a regional editor for Latin America at ISI Emerging Markets Group for over 5 years. He plays a key role expanding our proprietary content industry research for emerging countries in Latin America, Asia, and Europe. We also have 4 panelists that will enjoy our panel discussion. Adriano Moraes, he is our research economist. He's responsible for our industry and macroeconomic analysis in Brazil. He previously worked at the Federation of Industry of the state of São Paulo, where he was in charge of covering public policies for the manufacturing sector. We have Álvaro Espítio. Álvaro is an economist and is currently a trade and regional integration consultant at the World Bank. He also contributes to ISI Emerging Markets team with macroeconomic and industry reports for Colombia, Ecuador, and Mexico. We have Fábio Bentes. Fábio is a senior economist at Brazil's National Confederation of Commerce of Goods, Service, and Tourism. He's responsible for monitoring the economic situation in Brazil and for the elaboration of forecast scenarios for a variety of indicators, including retail sales, employment, and household consumption. And Juan Manuel Costa. He's a quantitative research associate at the University of Buenos Aires in the area of nonlinear econometric models for macroeconomic and financial topics. He also contributes to ISI research team with industry and macroeconomic reports for the major economies in Latin America. So before we start, I'd like to mention a couple things. The presentation is already available for download in the handout session, and you can submit your questions during the whole presentation, so we'll reply to them in our Q&A session. And at the end of the webinar, you will see a survey, so it's important to hear your feedback over our event so we can continue improving our webinars, right? I wish you all a good panel discussion, and I will leave you now with the experts. Svetoslav?
Thank you, Vanessa, and hello, everyone. Let me go over to our agenda and present you what topics we'll be covering in today's panel discussion. Well, the coronavirus, of course, the panel discussion will be centered on the topic of the coronavirus, which entered Latin America on February 26th, when Brazil confirmed a case in the city of Sao Paulo. Since then, the coronavirus has spread to all corners of the region, prompting governments to take several measures to contain its spread, including national lockdowns, movement restrictions, and bans on non-essential activities. Despite all of these measures, regrettably, at the end of July, Latin America has become the region with the highest number of confirmed cases globally, accounting for more than a quarter of all cases. Moreover, just a few days ago, the region broke another negative record, and with over 200,000 fatalities, surpassed Europe in terms of COVID deaths. Overall, the COVID pandemic had an unprecedented impact on economic demand in Latin America. It has changed consumer patterns, disrupted traditional business models, and reconfigured the role of the state in the economy. Nevertheless, the new normal, the so-called new normal post-COVID, has also created major opportunities for consumers, companies, and governments. And precisely this different angle is the focus of today's panel discussion that we organize. We will center our debate around 3 main topics. First, the new consumer demand. We will respond to the question, what is here to stay? How can we benefit from the new digital consumer behavior? Then we will focus our attention on how businesses adapt to the new reality. And we will discuss if the digitalization is the single most important factor for a fast recovery from the COVID shock, or are there other factors? Finally, we will also explore the new role of governments and answer some questions of high relevance. Are we entering into a new era of greater state intervention? And are there proactive government measures that sustain a healthy economy? For each of these topics, our panelists have prepared insightful charts and tables, which you will see today in today's presentation. So let's begin with our first topic, which is centered on the new consumer demand. Well, undoubtedly, the COVID pandemic has accelerated several mega trends, as we all know, with one of them being the digitalization of everyday life. The lockdown forced all of us to stay at home, disrupting our previous consumer habits, like to commute every day, to go to the office, to have a meal or a drink in the city center, to visit the shopping center with the kids during the weekend. Today, even though the lockdown measures in several countries were eased or eliminated, all of this seems to be a thing from the past. Well, the new digital consumer has new habits. He continues to pass at home most of his time. He relies increasingly on technologies to communicate, to work, to study, to be entertained at home, and turns more frequently to online shopping, even for daily groceries. Well, given this global trend, everyone, let's discuss, do we see this new digital consumer in Latin America? Let's start with Brazil, the largest consumer market. Fabio, what does the new digital consumer in Brazil look like?
Yeah, Svetoslav, thank you once again for this invitation. Going to the point, the numbers of e-commerce nowadays, they were unthinkable a couple of months ago. We have to keep in mind that the e-commerce, it has the share of e-commerce in Brazil, it's about 3 to 4%. So much less than when you compare it to US, United Kingdom, Germany. So what we're seeing now is, according to what you have just said, a changing behavior of consumers. So in order to illustrate this, I brought some figures for you coming from the Ministry of Economy. So if we compare the e-commerce volume of sales in June, for example, then you will see that volume, it has grown by more than 70%. So much for a country with just 3 to 4% e-commerce share. If we consider the number of transactions, then it raised by 140% in June. And as we can see in the graph, this is a sustainable trend, steeper trend compared, for example, to January or February. So because we are in the middle of the pandemic, those numbers, they tell us that the average ticket has declined by 30%, because of course the country, the economy, households, they were very affected by the pandemic, especially in terms of labor market. So we had a declining process in terms of the overall income for consumption. To complement this idea, we had a survey on CNC last year showing that the higher frequency on e-commerce, it was growing in the past years, in the last years. So if we take those high frequent consumers in 2015, for example, they used to respond by 24% of the online shopping. So those going to buy daily or weekly. Last year, it was about 25%. So unfortunately, we don't have numbers for 2020 because it's even too difficult to get those numbers in the middle of pandemic, but I am convinced that the higher frequency in terms of e-commerce, it has grew a lot during the pandemic, as shown by the previous graph. So we are watching quick changing of behavior by Brazilian consumers. We have to keep in mind that this is a 200 million country. So in terms of opportunities, if someone thinks about opening a store in Brazil, for sure, it should be an online shop instead of a physical one. So that's the point I would like to bring.
Thank you, Fabio. It's a very interesting figures that you have provided us. And let's see what do we have in other countries in Latin America. Juan, can you tell us what can we see, what the trends we see in Argentina, Chile, and Colombia, for example?
Yes, the main trends that we see in these countries are essentially very similar to the ones that we find in Brazil. E-commerce as a share of total retail in most of these countries is around 5%. But during the months after the pandemic has consolidated and spread in these countries, we have seen an enormous expansion in specific segments of e-commerce. For example, in food retail, and also in segments such as sportswear, children apparel, and apparel in general. This is a common trend for all countries in the region. And the increase has been really extraordinary, for example, with 200% in increases in segments such as food. And this trend, of course, is partly compensated by in some countries such as Colombia, where sales of air tickets is included in as part of e-commerce. So we have, for example, that for Colombia, we have a reduction in a decline in online sales, but this is only due to the effect of the decline in sales in air tickets online. But in general,
yes, we have this this item of the food. This is very interesting trend, the search in online sales of food, and
yes.
What opportunity this represents for us or the businesses.
Yes, the companies most benefit by this are companies engaging in online food delivery platforms such as, for example, Rappi in Colombia, Brazil and Argentina, which has a strong presence. For example, Corner Shop in Chile and Mexico. These are companies that have profit the most from this because they are not only delivering food, but they are also expanding their services. They are taking advantage of the context of the pandemic. They're expanding their services to delivery of other items, and also they are starting to offer other type of services, such as, for example, streaming of music concerts, online bets, and in general, they are taking a huge advantage of the large pool of clients that this pandemic has brought to them as a result of increasing e-commerce.
Thank you, Juan. It's very interesting to hear that some companies are thriving in this situation, and thank you very much for giving us this very good example. Okay, everyone, another top topic that I would like to bring your attention and to hear your opinion is the changing consumer basket in the post-COVID world. What are the changes in what we buy? Fabio, can you tell us what is your view on that?
Yeah, can see very clearly swapping trends in terms of expenditure. So after pandemics, we had expenses on leisure, entertainment, apparel, and trips declining process. On the other hand, we have shopping at supermarkets, expenses on health and education. They are growing since the beginning of pandemic. So this is a new normal type of consumption, I mean, allocation of consumption, if you take into account what we had before all this problem has started. So, but how consumers are doing this? The physical stores, they still the preferred channel in terms of consumption in Brazil. We made a survey last year, and as you can see in the second graph, more than 60% of the preferation of the Brazilian consumers, they are concentrated in physical stores. But we can see a very steeper trend in terms of online shopping via smartphones. This is what we call the m-commerce. We're going to talk about it later on in this webinar, but the cost of internet is still a problem in Brazil in order to get that digitalization process of consumption complete in this country. So we are in front of a new normal in terms of consumption. I think that basket of consumptions, it will change again once you have a vaccine, for example. But in terms of channels, I think that we are watching a new normal, a new way how Brazilians consume. So buying via smartphones is getting much more important than before. That's the point.
Fabio. Fabio. But let me ask you this because you mentioned about the physical stores and the rise in the online shopping. Is it premature to say that to talk for the demise of the physical store? Would we need it, the physical store, in our retail strategies?
Yeah, we're still needing this, but shopping center industry is suffering a lot from COVID-19 because we have restrictions all over the country. The shopping centers, they can operate just by 30%. So the COVID-19 is it's a strong shock in the economy that even that trend of growing rates in shopping centers that we had before the COVID-19, it has changed. So now the physical street shops, they are presenting better results than shopping centers. So we cannot compare this to the mobile e-commerce, but in terms of industry, we are facing a new trend for sure in the following years.
Okay. And you mentioned this retail channel of the traditional retail channel of the shopping centers, but what does the future hold for this traditional shopping channel? Is their business model viable in the post-COVID world? Perhaps, Juan, what is your opinion on that?
Yes, I think that there is indeed a very good opportunity for shopping centers, but they have to adjust to this new context because one problem is the need for space and need for social distancing. So we are seeing some interesting examples, for example, in Mexico, where we have shopping centers like Grand Outlet Mall Entertainment, which will open in the half of next year, that will take advantage of very large open spaces and very large opportunities for entertainment besides the retail. For example, with an amusement park, a large karting circuit, and other type of outdoor activities. So I think that for shopping centers in the region, it will be extremely important, especially for large ones, to have open and entertainment spaces as along with retail in order to attract people and allow people for interaction, but with good spacing.
Okay, so we are saying that they need to transform. They need to transform part of their business model in order to survive. Is that right?
Yes. I think that the trend that we're seeing, especially in countries such as Mexico, but also in Chile, is that for shopping centers, they are trying to transform the business model, and the retail portion of the business model, the rents that usually the center collects, will be a much smaller share of the total income. Many developers are trying to reach perhaps a 30% of income derived from actual physical stores, and the rest of the income derived from entertainment, restaurants, whenever possible, of course, in this case, and other activities.
Oh, that's a very interesting angle. Let's see what is happening in Colombia. Alvaro, can you tell us what is your view on that?
Yeah, in Colombia, we have been seeing that shopping centers are adapting to these new requirements from the government, and also in terms of like access to the shopping centers. One good example is LD, a shopping center that was recently inaugurated here in Bogota, in which the shopping center include a designated a bike path for accessing the shopping center, so people can enter by bike and have a nicer and cleaner experience instead of arriving by car. And also we have been seeing some shopping centers creating this in-car experience where people can buy in their cars or in their bikes, and somebody from the shopping center will bring the products to their car.
Well, that's a very interesting example of this transformation that we are talking. Okay, and Adriano, any comment on you? How do you see this transformation of retail stores in Brazil?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Svetoslav. There are opportunities for physical stores and shopping centers in Brazil and even in some other countries. The opportunities mainly for stores located in the suburbs of big cities. As more people work from home, we can expect a reallocation of major commercial activities, usually located in the business districts of cities, of big cities. So stores located near offices in downtowns or financial centers will face a reduction in demand, while shops and restaurants located in the suburbs may see growth opportunities. Partly, they can benefit from the shift in demand from downtown stores, but they can also seize some opportunities with omni-channel strategies. These stores, geographically spread on the territory, can be used to assist the logistics of companies, platforms, and business in general. The physical space of these stores can be used as part of a decentralized inventory system, or to assist a click and collect strategy with lockers when customers go to the physical stores to withdraw the products they bought online. Moreover, brick and mortar stores in the suburbs close to the customer's house can also work as places of customer experience, where consumers can try some products and see how these products meet their needs. So this concept is also perfect for shopping centers. And from now, because customers in shopping centers can find many brands in only one place. And also the storage area of shopping centers in the suburbs can be expanded and work as an integrated logistics center for many chain stores to support online sales, sharing the same physical structure.
Well, thank you, Adriano. Thank you very much for this insightful analysis. I'm very glad that although there are very challenging moments for the shopping centers and the physical stores, we are seeing these good examples, this evidence that the companies are transforming and taking this opportunity to transform and to adapt to the new digital consumer. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for this topic. As we have a very interesting topics to discuss, I would like to shift our attention to our next main topic. Let's see the company angle now. Let's see what measures companies have taken to adapt to the needs of the new digital consumer. Well, we can all agree that the COVID pandemic has prompted businesses to go digital. And this is not a new trend. This is a trend that existed even before the COVID. But now the pandemic made the digitalization of the operations critical. Well, companies, I believe that you agree with this statement, that companies needed to invest in technology only to survive, like in order to interact with the suppliers, to ensure the continuation of the operations, and most importantly, to reach this new digital consumer that we have discussed. So do we see this global trend in Latin America? Are companies accelerating their plans to go digital? Juan, can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I think that this trend of digitalization, we can observe it very clearly in those companies and segments which are very busy right now as a result of the pandemic. For example, in external trade and in port operators. We are seeing, for example, that in Colombia, Santa Marta Port, the operator of Santa Marta Port in Colombia, announced in July 2020 that as a result of the pandemic, there were planning on the adoption and implementation of a advanced technological package with the main aim to increase the efficiency of their operations. And in order to do so, they plan to incorporate 5G telecommunications infrastructure. They plan to automate processes. They plan to increase the flow of information inside the port. And they plan to incorporate also real-time artificial intelligence software. The main focus for the port operator pertains to surveillance. Surveillance of container cargo, for example, because as there is less people working effectively in the ports due to social distancing, there is a need to have a more indirect control of safety. So safety with surveillance and monitoring of operations through digital means is very, very important. And also, they are trying also to help ships crews stationed in the port with real-time images through augmented reality systems and all tools that help the port to operate better without less people there. That's the main idea.
That's a very interesting example. Very interesting example how businesses take this opportunity now to go digital. And you mentioned Colombia. Can we mention another examples for Colombia? Alvaro?
Yes, Bertola. In Colombia, there's a nice example as well, which with Rappi, the delivery company, which is now helping the small and medium enterprises to go online. They have created a new company which is called Rappi Propio, in which any SME from any industry can create their own website and can create all their platform to sell through it, and the products will be delivered through Rappi. So it's a really nice opportunity for the small and medium companies, as this service is free right now until December. So you can create your own website and start selling digitally at a really easy process.
Yes, and I'm sure this is a good example that can be replicated in other countries and by other companies. Thank you, Alvaro, for mentioning this. But let me switch a little bit the tone of the conversation. Okay, we are saying that the digitalization is the key here, but let's talk a little bit. What are the challenges for this digitalization of companies in Latin America? As you see here in the slide of our presentation, we have three main problems virtually. The first one is that large portions of the population in Latin America still do not use the internet. Then another problem is that the underdeveloped fixed broadband infrastructure. In many countries in the region, there are large areas where people can access the internet only through their mobile phones because of the deficient fixed line infrastructure. Even in the areas where this infrastructure exists, the connection speeds are low and there are frequent interruptions in connection, as I believe you can all validate. And also the region lags behind in terms of adoption of 5G technologies. For instance, you can see here in this chart that as of July, there were only 3 deployments of 5G networks with commercial availability in Latin America, 2 in Brazil and 1 in Uruguay. Well, how can we deal with this? How can we deal with these challenges? And how are companies trying to resolve them? I would like to hear your opinion on that. Fabio, can you? Yeah, let's start with you.
Yes, as you can see, the new model is highly dependent on internet, on access to internet. In Latin America, as you mentioned, we have still having problems in terms of coverage, but you have to keep in mind that those uncovered areas, they don't have the same potential of consumption than the other ones. So it's a matter of concern, it is, but not too much. In terms of internet speed, internet access, in Brazil, we are very close to the global average speed. So it's not the main point here. The main point for the full development of this new normal based on the digitalized world is the price of internet access. If you take a standard internet service pack and we normalize the price of this pack according to the purchase power parity, so in order to be comparable among countries, then we have the problem here, because compared to the developed world, Brazil internet access costs more than twice compared to the developed world, developed countries. So here in this country, on average, families spend 1.8% of the income on internet access. Compared to the developed world, it's 0.8%. So how are we going to solve this? Brazilian government is preparing a public auction that will take place in the beginning of next year. And by doing this, I think this is a 5G auction, it's a 5G system. By doing this, if this auction is successful, then we can make the price of the 4G, of the current technology, more cheap for Brazilian consumers. And a part of this, we have private companies acting in this market. So Claro and Vivo, which is the Brazilian Telefonica arm of Telefonica, we're gonna have 5G technology available in the second half of this year. So I think by doing this, we can make internet access cheaper in Brazil. And I think in Latin America, Svetoslav, the scenario, the framework is quite similar from here.
Thank you, Fabio. Let's see what the others think. Juan, what is the case in Argentina in terms of the internet access? Is the price the main problem, or, as we discussed, the availability of the connection in some areas?
Right now, I think that in Argentina, price is indeed the main problem, especially as Argentina is in a process of high inflation and eroding real salaries and wages. For example, here the price of internet connection, of a good internet connection in an urban area of, for example, 50 megabytes per 50 megabytes, you have that this is around 15% of the minimum wage, which is a lot. And this problem is indeed a problem because many people perhaps cannot afford a household permanent internet connection, and they connect to internet perhaps through the mobile phone and through prepaid plans. And with prepaid plans, the issue that you have is that you are not always connected. You connect only very few hours in the day. So it is more difficult for companies to reach clients that way.
That's right. That's right. And let's see what is the case in Colombia. Over to you on the topic.
Yeah, in Colombia we have a similar situation to that discussed in Brazil and in Argentina. The price here is is relatively expensive, and also the coverage is really bad. As you can see on this figure here, we only cover at around 60% of the population has internet access. So, and these figures are really low when we see small cities and rural areas, because like internet haven't get yet.
Okay, well, thank you, Alvaro. Let me also switch once again the tone of the conversation with with another factor apart from the digitalization. Let me ask you this: apart from the digitalization, do you see any other factor that can support the recovery of the business from the COVID shock? Let me just rephrase a bit my question. Several analysts point out that the pandemic prompted deep transformation of the global value chains. In order to avoid major interruptions in the production and reduce the reliance on one single supplier or single supplying country, many companies are looking now for new suppliers located geographically close to their production plants or their key markets. They are also considering relocating part of their production of key inputs in their home countries or in neighboring countries, the so-called nearshoring trend. Well, this can provide them, of course, greater flexibility in order to respond to market changes. Well, in this context, can we see that this transformation of global value chains provide nearshoring opportunities in Latin America? Here in the slide, you can see a very interesting map from a study of the World Bank that we present on the participation of the countries in Latin America in the global value chains. Alvaro, can you tell us more about this survey and what are the nearshoring opportunities in Latin America according to you?
Yeah, so here in this map, we can see that all countries in the world are participating in global value change, but not all countries participate in the same way. In Latin America, we see that only Mexico has a high integration into global value change, while the rest of the countries, especially Colombia, Peru, Chile, Ecuador, they have been mainly focused in commodities, while other countries such as Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, they have been more present in limited manufacturing activities. What this means is that Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, they are really dependent on exports of especially mining and agricultural commodities, which in fact, with this COVID situation has been really a hard shock for their exports. For example, Colombia, which exports more than 50% of its exports are oil dependent. With this heavily shock, they saw a huge reduction. While other countries such as Mexico, okay, they're really integrated into global value change, but they're really dependent on the US. So with this huge shock, we have seen that mainly 80% of their exports decreased during this period. For answering your question on the nearshoring opportunities, we actually see an opportunity with all this reconfiguration in the global value chain for Latin America to step forward and start integrating not only with the world, but maybe within the region. Because one of the main reasons that we have been seeing that Latin America is not developing enough in this GVC participation is that there is not a regional hub, a country that is like the center for all the regional integration. And maybe we can see, I don't know, maybe Brazil or Colombia or maybe Argentina as the center for this regional integration in which the global value chains or the regional value chains can start increasing.
Okay, and may I assume that this reconfiguration in the participation of the global value chains is also accompanied by diversification of the product mix, like specialization in products with higher value added?
Yeah, and we have been seeing around the world how countries that were really dependent on a single supplier or a single market for exports have been heavily shocked, while those that have a more diversified list of suppliers and even in products have been able to manage these current shocks in a better way.
Thank you, Alvaro. Let me go to Juan. We discussed before the panel discussion a very interesting example of this diversification. Juan, can you tell us more about this example?
Yes, we have a very interesting example related specifically to the pandemic, which is the manufacturing of mechanical ventilators. For example, Argentina has two plants for manufacturing of mechanical ventilators located both in the province of Córdoba, which have experienced a very large increase in demand, regional demand, as a result from the pandemic, with a high number of order exports, mainly from Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, Guatemala, Paraguay, Chile, Colombia, and Ecuador. In the months after the pandemic has started in the region, they have sold more than 115 mechanical ventilators, but they could not yet export them because the government has put some restriction on exports in order to assure the domestic supply. But the key thing here is that this has opened a very good opportunity for this kind of companies, because there is a need, especially from many countries in the region, to have local or regional supply sources of these critical items, and not depend so much on China and India.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you. It's very good to see that we have these good examples in Latin America. Well, I believe that we all can agree that the companies that accelerate their digital transformation, that are more flexible, that pursue this diversification that we discussed, they can recover faster than the COVID shock. And I propose to move to our final topic, which is also related with what we discussed just now, about the new role of governments. Well, as we all know, governments resorted to many unconventional measures to protect their citizens and ensure the adequate supply of key goods in the domestic market during the pandemic. They have adopted export bans on face masks, on pharmaceuticals, on medical equipment. Here you can see once again a map that we have sourced from a study of the World Bank showing that as of August 7, 90 jurisdictions have adopted such bans on exports of medical supplies and medicines, including 9 countries in Latin America. Talking also, having into consideration the trade dispute between China and the US before the pandemic, some analysts even predicted that we have already entered into a new era of deglobalization and rising trade protectionism. So is there evidence for this in Latin America? Alvaro, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, as Juan mentioned before, like we have been seeing that across Latin American countries and all over the world, actually, there's a lot of export restriction that has been imposed in order to guarantee national sovereignty in terms of medical supplies, such as ventilators, also medical masks. And we have been seeing that countries such as Colombia imposing these medical mask constraints have had, in a sense, a positive effect in some industries. For example, in Colombia, the manufacturing industry and the textiles industries benefited from these export restrictions in the sense that they were aware that there was a huge market in Colombia, and they start migrating to producing facial masks. For example, all the swimwear apparel industry companies, they create all these facial masks with a little bit more of a style and design, and now they're starting to covering all the national market, and now seeing an opportunity to export in these products, which have also invited the government to reduce these export restrictions as an opportunity to recover from the pandemic.
Well, that's a very good example, and especially for economists that, like me, that are in favor of liberal trade. Okay, thank you very much, Alvaro, for this comment and good example. And let's go to the next topic, because I know that we have a lot more interesting topics to discuss. Okay, talking about the new role of governments, let's just switch the tone to the measures that were adopted by the government to alleviate the impact from the pandemic on households, on businesses. Governments around the world widely adopted such programs to support household incomes, the businesses, like having direct cash transfers to all income and self-employed individuals, authorizing grants to cover payroll costs, authorizing delays in payment of taxes. But probably what grabbed the most attention of the society were these programs that were providing direct cash transfers to households. They raised multiple questions, these programs. First, let's focus on what are the effects of these programs on household income. Are they effectively supporting the income of the most vulnerable part of the population, at least to help this part of the population buy the most essential goods? Juan, can you tell us more about this, because you have prepared this extremely interesting table on the topic?
Yes, I think that this is a story that varies a lot depending on the country. I think that for countries such as Argentina and Chile, these programs are indeed significantly large. They reach or potentially reach around 20% of the population in both cases. And they have a value that it is not extremely large, but it is significant on household income. And in the specific case of Argentina, these programs are already complementing other social programs and can be combined with other social programs. So for countries such as Chile and Argentina, I think that as these countries have been under a very more or less very less strict lockdown, these programs are really having an effect. For other countries such as Peru and Colombia, we are seeing that the programs are much smaller in scope. They reach less than 10% of the population, and also their monetary value is smaller, but at least they are being implemented, and they are also helping a bit with demand.
Okay, thank you, Juan. Let's go to Colombia and Alvaro. Alvaro, what is your opinion on these programs? How they impact household demand? And according to you, do you see, are they positive? Are they needed?
Yeah, this program is very interesting because it's actually driven by the high level of informality that we have in the country, which has made like a lot of vulnerable families, given that they are not allowed to continue working, or their income was really fluctuating before, and now during the pandemic with the social distancing measures and all the measures that the government has imposed. So these families have been needing this kind of program. But one of the main complaints against this program is actually the value, because as you can see, it's a really low value, which is not enough for covering a family. This is a value that is per household, is not per person. So it's really low when you think about it compared to, for example, the minimum wage. This is only 1/5 of the minimum wage. And
okay.
But one positive thing to highlight from this program is that it has helped to accelerate the process of financial inclusion, because in order to receive this subsidy, families need to have a bank account, which have at least move a little bit this sector, and have a little bit of financial education as well.
Well, that's a very interesting example, yes, about the financial inclusion. Let's see what is happening in Brazil. Fabio, your opinion, your brief comment about the program this program in Brazil. What are the effects on household demand, according to you?
Well, I think the effect is positive in terms that those programs, they could recompose part of the income, half of it, to be honest. They should continue. We expect this to be extended to the end of 2020, but government hasn't signed if it will be the case, actually. So we're likely to continue because it could make the actual environment for retailers, for example, better at the end of the year. So I think it's important. It should continue, but it's not enough to recompose all of the income. So people are a little bit concerned in terms of people getting those resources and quitting, looking for jobs. I don't believe this. I think in the third quarter of this year, a Brazilian will restart looking for jobs, and this is a very challenging point for the Brazilian economy at the moment, because we know we are restricted. The federal budget is restricted by a higher level of public debt. So we have a trade-off here. The problems, they are important, but we have the public accounts in poor conditions compared to the other countries in Latin America.
Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Fabio. And this was precisely our last topic that I would like to cover. And thank you for this bridge. Okay, we are talking about these programs. Okay, they are not sufficient. They do not provide large amounts of money, but for at least some parts of the population, they are much needed. But let's discuss what the effects of these programs on the country's debt and fiscal sustainability. The indebtedness in Latin America has been growing at an alarming pace, as you can see in this chart, even before the pandemic. Well, with all these programs that were launched by the governments to support households, businesses, do the countries in the region, in fact, have this fiscal room to preserve these programs for a longer period, as Fabio mentioned, for 6 or 7 or more months? Juan, can you tell us what is your opinion on that, let's say, in the case of Argentina?
Well, in the case of Argentina, there is this significant restriction that there is Argentina suffering from a problem of debt sustainability, and so Argentina is very, very constrained, especially in the longer term, because it has just recently renegotiated its external debt with private creditors, but it will only give room for Argentina for 2 or 3 years, and then payments will increase significantly. So I do not think that there is much room for a longer term extension of this. But a short-term or medium-term extension, I think that Argentina will try to, even in spite of the need of money printing, they try to continue with these programs. Another interesting case is Mexico, because Mexico is not in the table that we presented before, because it has not implemented a federal program of this kind. And Mexico is indeed taking a frugal approach and is trying to not overexpend in this. So is trying to not overspend in these programs, and I think that Mexico will not likely implement this type of programs.
Yes, and we are seeing in the previous slide, we saw that Mexico didn't launch such programs. Okay, thank you, Juan. Thank you, Juan. So let's see the case in Brazil. Adriano, can you tell us, does the Brazilian government has fiscal room to extend these programs for more than this 5 months that are already pledged?
No, the government has no fiscal room because it has a very accelerated, the public debt is accelerating very fast. It was 76% of GDP in December 2019, and it's expected to reach 97% of GDP at the end of 2020. So the government has no fiscal room. So the strategy of the government is to optimize, to unify the social programs and also to adopt measures to provide more flexibility to labor relations. The plans of the governments to adopt also subsidies like the negative income tax to low-income workers and tax reductions to stimulate more jobs. To offset these taxes reductions, the government plans to approve a tax reform that will increase some other taxes, like tax on financial transactions and dividends. So the strategy is to reallocate revenues and expenditures to implement these new social programs and reduce the pressure on public finances.
Yes, thank you for that. And let me just summarize. Yes, okay, they are pressured by the debt, but in the current circumstances, do you agree, Adriano, that all this higher public spending is needed? Is needed to reactivate the economy, to boost households, businesses, to help them exit this shock?
Yes. Yes, they are very relevant to rebound the retail sector and the services sector that are very relevant sectors in the Brazilian economy. So I think they are necessary. It's a temporary situation, and we need to make some efforts to reduce the impacts of this temporary situation on the economy and to provide a good performance on the next years.
Okay, thank you, Adriano. Let's see Colombia. What is the situation in Colombia overall? And does the government has fiscal room to extend the programs and to launch even new ones?
Yeah, the government is currently saying that this special program is gonna last until the end of the year, but the government is start talking that they're planning to extend it depending on how the recovery of the economy and how the pandemic continues, because we're still on lockdowns, we're still taking measures because we haven't reached the peak, and there's still economic situations happening here. So the government saying that maybe if this program needs to be extended to 2021 or maybe even 2022, there would be a need to start selling state-run companies, because the company don't want to finance this through debt. They prefer to start selling companies because they don't see there's fiscal room.
Well, that's very interesting, and yeah, we can expect more governments in the region to follow this model. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, because we have reached our 1 hour mark. Let me summarize the main topics that we have agreed here, that now in the current post-COVID situation, we have a higher expectation for the government, right? We expect the government to support this transformation that we observe both on a company and individual levels. We need the government to help individuals preserve their income, to support companies to transform their business. And yes, as we discussed, the growing debt is a must need in the short term in order to reactivate the economy, but really a cause of concern in the long term, because the debt levels in Latin America are already reaching unsustainable levels. For those of you who are interested more on the government policy side, please be invited to our upcoming panel discussion, which will be focused on the government response to the COVID pandemic. It will be held on August 27th. Stay tuned for more details. And with that said, and yes, because we are close to the 1 hour mark, we will go to our Q&A session. We have already received quite a number of questions, and I highly encourage you, everyone, to submit your questions using the question panel on the right in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, let me see the first questions that we have received. I will read you. Let's do the following. I will read the questions and ask one of you to respond. Okay, so we have the first question. Do you think that as online everything is easily available with cheaper prices, this e-commerce figure may not change quite faster after post-COVID world? Fabio, what is your opinion on this question?
Yeah, I think that we we agreed that we are in front of a new world in terms of consumption. The omni stores, Adriano mentioned before, it's a very important aspect of this. It's a natural exit from the pandemic, because as we've seen, the Brazilian retail sector was highly concentrated in physical stores. So we are moving to this new normal, let's say like this. In terms of the expansion of e-commerce, of course, I don't expect to see such higher growing rates in next year, because the Brazilian consumers, they have just shifted to the online world. But this is an irreversible trend. I see it like this. In order to answer the question specifically, we ran a survey on CNC recently, asking for consumers to choose one point why they go online for shopping. And the first point was price. Of course, we have others aspects explored in the survey, such as customization, conveniencing by shopping online, but price was the most important one, cited by more than 1/3 of the respondents. So 34% of the respondents pointed the price as the main aspect why they go online. It's natural in a country like Brazil. It's a developing country, and I think this is a trend for the future as the new generations, they get into the consumption market. So for sure, you're going to have this trend in the following years, but not growing so quickly as we're seeing now. That's what I expect.
Okay. Thank you very much, Fabio. Let's go to the next questions. We have received a lot of questions, and I would like to answer them, the majority of them. So we have another question. Do you experience cash holding and less expenditure in Latin America due to a dearth of jobs employment? Well, pretty much, do we expect less expenditure in Latin America as a result of the rising unemployment? Adriano, perhaps you can take this question.
Yes, thank you, Swetoslav. Yes, I can take it. Yes, we have observed that the income has fallen and the unemployment has increased, and it has an impact on the expenditure and income. Yes, of course, but it's interesting that you increase savings also, but it's interesting that consumers have not adjusted their budget on a homogeneous way after the reduction in income. Some non-essential segments saw a higher decline in demand than others. So you have, for example, the sales of apparel and footwear declining more than consumer electronics and furniture. So there are, of course, the income has reduced, the expenditures have reduced, but you have opportunities for some segments that has had a higher decrease, that had a higher increase. On a relative way, some segments decreased more than others. So you have opportunities because the consumers reallocated their budget. So there are opportunities to some segments like the consumer electronics and furniture, home appliances, and etc.
Okay, well, thank you, Adriano. Thank you, Adriano, for this detailed answer. Another question. Do you believe the trend you are describing is strong enough to last through time? Tired, confined population will continue consuming from home and continue feeling to be confined. Oh, this is another question about the new habits of the new digital consumer. Okay, confined and home, will the consumer continue consuming, continue shopping? Let's have a small debate on this. Juan, what is your opinion on that?
Yes, I think that one interesting aspect is the consumption that is associated, for example, to the experience of the purchase. This is very important for apparel retailers, and this is one of the main uncertainties, how people will have access to this experience. Now they are confined because it is different. For example, purchasing food, that the process of purchasing a luxury apparel or a luxury item. So I think that as long as retailers can adapt and offer experiences, digital experiences to consumers, this will allow this digital trend to continue. But if this digital experience is not good, I think that people will want to go back to physical stores, especially in apparel.
Okay. And Alvaro, what is your opinion on that? Do you agree with Juan?
Yeah, I'm very aligned with what Juan just mentioned. And actually, here in Colombia, we're seeing this digital tendency in which companies are starting to mix between the physical store and the digital experience. So consumers, driven mainly by all these social distancing measures, consumers and stores are creating an online experience for customers to feel like they're on the store. But also, when you go to the store, they're just trying to present you some products, some like continue the experience, but doing all the sales online. So they're trying to continue with a mix between both experiences, because I think people are getting tired of doing everything online, but there's a need, and there's also ways to make a better experience of this online shopping.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we have another question here on Argentina. I believe, Juan, you can take this. Has the process of renegotiating countries' debt limited the capacity of governments to handle the COVID crisis?
Yes, I think that the process has been quite long, and it is not complete yet, because after successfully completing the renegotiation of the debt with external private creditors, Argentina has to initiate a renegotiation of the debt with the IMF, which will be a very complex process, and especially this renegotiation of debt with IMF and a potential new program. It is very likely that the IMF will put significant restrictions on how much can the government spend. So that will be the main problem for the following years. After the IMF agrees to a plan, they will likely put a limit on this spending, and this will be the main restraint.
Okay, thank you, Juan. Another question. They are coming and coming. Okay, this one is for Colombia. Okay, Alvaro, perhaps you can take this. During your presentation, you mentioned the high reliance of Colombia on the exports of a single product, oil. How can the country diversify its export mix?
Yeah, actually, Colombia right now is starting a internationalization mission, in which with a group of experts, they're understanding how to diversify both in terms of products and in terms of destination of their products and their exports, in order to also, as we mentioned before, integrate into the global value chain and start benefiting from the international trade. One of the things that Colombia has been doing around this topic is trying to improve and take advantage of the different aspects of its regions, because Colombia is a very diversified country in which you can get a lot of products, a lot of resources from the different regions around the country. So they're trying to potentialize all the different regions with government companies such as ProColombia, which is doing a huge investment in going to the regions, talking with the industries, talking with the different governments around the country to see how to potentialize these different aspects from all the regions.
Okay, thank you, Alvaro. Thank you, Alvaro, for this. Another question. Okay, in the new normal marked by digitalization and automation of the business processes, what will be the fate of low-income employees? Would it be more difficult to all of us to find a job? That's a very interesting question. Fabio, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, I have a comment on this. I think the new digitalization, it will require more skilled workers. This is a point of concern in Latin America. This is specifically a point of concern in Brazil. When you look to the unemployment figures, you cannot catch this directly, but that new normal, that new digitalized world, it will bring us a challenge for the future, because Brazilian productivity is not so high as in the other countries, even compared inside Latin America. So I am a little bit afraid if we don't invest too much. I mean, not just the government, but the private sector too. If you don't invest in programs to increase the productivity of labor workers, then we're going to have problems for the future. A fixed unemployment rate in the future. So we made a research on this recently, and if we don't invest on increasing labor productivity in Brazil, then for each 10 jobs lost during the last 5 years crisis, then we have 2 unemployed people out of the market in a permanent way. So this
and we can all agree that this is the time to invest, right? We should take this opportunity to invest. Okay, let me just hear your brief comment on this question, because it's very interesting, and we will be closing the Q&A session. Juan, what is your opinion on this about the employment?
Yes, I can comment about Argentina. I think that for a country such as Argentina, there is one good thing about this crisis, and it is that Argentina is very specialized in agricultural exports and export of food. And we have been seeing an increase in exports even in this year in the context of the pandemic, for example, of fruits, of meat, and other products that are very important for the Argentine export mix. And this type of rural production can be a supporting factor for employment especially in the interior of the country. So I think that this is something of an umbrella for low-income workers and not skilled workers, but mainly in the interior regions of the country.
Okay, thank you, Juan. And Alvaro, a brief comment on you on this?
Yeah, in Colombia, in terms of employment, we have been seeing a lot of discussion on whether we should use this opportunity, like these pandemic discussions and all the things that we have been seeing, to actually debate a labor reform in which we can readjust to, for example, the minimum wage. Instead of having a countrywide minimum wage, have a minimum wage depending on the regions and the productivity of the different regions, so we can boost the employment across the country and also start moving forward in order to reduce all these additional costs that we have right now in terms of employment.
Okay, thank you very much. And yes, with this sense of hope, I suggest to close this panel discussion. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this panel discussion was interesting to all of you, and that it had provided you some advice from our experts on how to address the majority of the COVID-related questions that we are all asking ourselves every day. I will encourage you to review our publications for additional details on how the COVID pandemic is disrupting the world and that we are living, and how we can benefit from these disruptions. Some of the flagship publications of ISI are the Emis Insight Industry Reports, providing a comprehensive analysis for more than 14 industries in over 20 emerging markets. the CIC Insights macroeconomic reports, which each quarter offer a comprehensive overview of the world's largest economies, as well as provide a macroeconomic outlook using our proprietary CIC leading indicator. And last but not least, the Emerging Markets COVID Impact Series, which we have prepared to help our customers assess the impact of the COVID pandemic on key industries in emerging markets using our proprietary trend deviation index. I will also encourage you to visit our YouTube channels and blogs where you can find recordings of all our webinars. Thank you very much for your attention and stay tuned for our next online events. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.